Hello there, and welcome to the live stream. So this is a studio painting that I'm currently working on. So here is the color palette down here. How's everyone doing today? So here is just the standard colors: the titanium white, burnt umber, alizarin, cadmium red. This is cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, sap green, ultramarine blue, ivory black. And that is the new medium I've been using, Venetian medium. Hey, Robert. And just the mineral spirits over here. So if you're new to the live chat, the way this works is I'm just working on a studio painting. So you get to watch me work on a studio painting and ask me anything you like. So the live chat is from 12 o'clock to 12:30. So right now on this, if you can see, I've been working here on the cheekbone. This is how I have my photo reference set up. So on the TV and on the laptop. So yeah, that's how I'm working. Hello. So yeah, feel free to ask me anything you like. Oh yes, everyone, about the what's going on with the. Thank you, thank you. The mentor tier. Okay, I'll go over the colors again. So I'm still writing some of the responses for the mentor tier. Give us some tips shading with acrylics. Okay, so this actually isn't. So one question was the colors. I can go back to that. And then the other question was the acrylic. Hold on. So the color. So this is the standard palette that I usually have. The titanium white, burnt umber. This is alizarin permanent. Hello. Cadmium red, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, sap ultra ivory, Venetian medium. The Venetian medium has a little bit of turpentine in it, but it's like a powdered glass type of thing. Let's see if I can zoom in. So it's really it's a really nice medium to use. You can see the consistency of it. It's kind of like liquid, a little bit like liquid or your usual alkyd mediums, but it's a lot more like creamy. You can tell how I'm mixing in with this. Now with acrylic, alizarin alizarin crimson will work just fine, to be honest. It's just on YouTube, a lot of people will complain about me using alizarin crimson versus permanent, just because permanent is not as prime your palette. Oh, retracted. Okay, the alizarin crimson will work just fine for our purposes. I mean, alizarin crimson, as I've been told, historically is a fugitive color, so it will fade over time. There's like how do you put it? There's a couple paintings out there that used to be like pink in the past, and then they turned out to be like a grayish color. I'm not so certain about that. You'd have to look up the fugitive alizarin crimson, historically how that affected paintings in the past. So yeah, you can use alizarin crimson, the regular one. It's perfectly fine. So right now I'm building up the middle stages, putting paint on it. Prime the palette. Prime the. Oh, you mean the painting? I think. I didn't oil it out, so this is the second layer of color. This is the third layer of oil paint on this. So I didn't oil it out. Rather, I'm just kind of building up through the middle tones. I'll only ever really oil out if I have to work really quickly. So if I have to work, huh? So if I have to work very fast, like for the YouTube tutorials, like if I have to get a portrait done in a week using the classical approach, then I'll have to oil out to glaze and work much faster. But in my own studio work, as you see here, um, I actually take much longer than what you see on the YouTube episodes. Yeah, the stream just started. So the camera is at an angle a little bit, but I have to angle it just so I can move my arm. Use black for making the shadows on the skin. You know, I don't really go by kind of like a recipe type of thing, but I can show you a shadow color that's going on at the moment. So I used a little bit of burnt umber ultramarine blue to create like a type of like a black, but not as cold as ivory black, so that burnt umber helps. And then I sneak in a little bit of alizarin permanent in there. And this is just my underpainting color. So this is all just underpainting. This was a little bit of the burnt umber type of influence in that color, though if you see here, I haven't really hit this yet. I haven't made any adjustments to it yet. I've just been working in this area. So it's kind of a slow process compared to the Alla Prima videos. So how do I know which colors to use for? Okay, so for instance, right now, I'm using the photo reference here. So with the photo reference, I don't trust it as much. So, some of like the flatness and the colors here, I don't quite trust. So I look for planes instead, like a plane here, here, here. So let's go back to the painting. So here, here, here. So with the picture, I look for the planes, right? And then I see a little bit of hue variation here, here on the picture. So I see a little bit of hue variation here. So it's a little more pink, a little bit more orangey here. But I don't really use that as a method of trying to formulate the exact color. Rather, I try to... No, it's okay. It's just I try to interpret the picture and pretend pretend that I'm working from life. As I mentioned in a lot of the videos, I prefer to work from life just because I can continue to work. Thank you. I can continue to work from life. Photoshop. Okay, so the Photoshop I'm not quite certain about. I haven't really used any paintings or done any paintings through Photoshop. The palette? Yeah, sure. So here's the color palette. And for those of you that have been asking on the YouTube videos about how I save these colors, notice how clean the palette is. So I use this. This was my acrylic. Oh, thank you. This was my acrylic Stay Wet palette. Oh, thank you. So this was my Stay Wet palette for acrylic, but I just use it to store my paints. So I didn't really use the orange today. So that's the cadmium orange. But I just put this in the freezer, so just in case. Oh, see, where's the paint? Yeah. Yeah, I have the palette set on the bottom. So usually when I work on a painting, like for more than a couple hours in a day, I prefer to just put it on the table. A greenish base? Yeah, I've seen that too. I've actually done something similar to that. I used kind of a cooler underpainting one time with ivory black. Though I prefer burnt umber, this kind of color, just because it kind of fits in with some of the halftones that I use. So right now, I'm just trying to kind of smoothen out these planes. So usually, so if I make a mistake, yeah, so if I put something wrong, so let's zoom in here. So if I make a mistake, especially when I'm layering with color here, I like that I can wipe out something. So suppose this is a mistake, right? So just like you would with any other type of painting, you can easily subtract. Versus, you know, if it were Alla Prima, that would have really stressed me out. And the consistency of the paint is a little more thin. So you know the fat over lean principle. So it just means that you want to use painting with pastel. That's cool. Yeah, I need to get myself some pastels. Though I did like working with acrylic when I was using it, but I don't know. Just I always gravitate towards oil paint. And right now, since this is the middle, sap green rather than Viridian. There's no real reason, to be honest, why I use sap green over Viridian. I've used Viridian in the past, but it's just been my preference to use sap green. I want to say Viridian from my memory. This could be wrong. Viridian is a little too blue, I think, for skin tone, but I could be. It could depend on the brand and the tube of paint. So right now, I'm just kind of planing out the cheekbone. So I have one brush for dark, one brush for light, and I'll actually spend several hours on just a little area like this in my own studio work. Whereas with the YouTube videos, especially the previous ones, use pastel. Actually, yes, I did use pastel in the past. Okay, so if you were to buy a wooden palette and it's not finished, I would suggest over several days putting linseed oil. I just prefer that type of buildup with a fresh palette. Though this one, I highly recommend this brand. So we're talking about wooden palettes right now. You can see how smooth the finish is over here. So this is a New Wave brand palette. This is actually the largest palette, I think, the largest palette that they sell. It's called the Grand View. So I really prefer their palettes just because look how like smooth the finish is. So if you're interested in wooden palettes, New Wave I think would probably be the best bet. You can find it. They have an Amazon store and everything, though fortunately enough for me, the first New Wave palette that I bought, which isn't the one I'm using now, the first one I bought was at a Plaza art store, so a local art store near me. The one I'm currently using, I actually ordered from them. I think actually when I was doing daily, I filmed an unboxing video. Wooden over glass. Yeah, I mean, I like glass, painting on glass too. Cheap and expensive oils. That is a very good question. Usually something I don't talk about in the in the YouTube videos. By the way, this won't be saved onto YouTube. So after the live chat's done, they're gone. So I can say things that won't get me in trouble as much, I guess. Okay, so cheap oil paints, avoid them. Just avoid them. So Winton, so Winsor and Newton has a student grade brand called Winton, Witon. Just avoid it. Avoid it. I have a lot of students in my portrait painting classes that show up with the Win10, even though I tell them to get the Windsor. And what it does is it really sacrifices the quality of the paint. So usually on YouTube, I don't really say things like "don't get this, don't get that," but yeah, Windsor, and Gamblin has a student grade one. I think it's like 1980 or something. I would avoid that too. If anything, if you want to transition into more high quality colors, just get the Zorn palette. The Zorn palette flesh tones. They're not that expensive to get a nice Winsor Newton artist grade or the Gamblin artist grade. And then I'm going to transition that to acrylics. I did buy cheap acrylics to start off with in the past. Prepare them. The palettes? I don't understand the question. Prepare the palettes. You mean the color mixtures? I don't really kind of pre-mix the colors too much, if that's what you're asking me. I mix up the color value web as I go, usually these days. So as I mix a color, I just kind of order the values. So let's look down here. So this kind of organization just happens. So like, for instance, I was taking a little bit of the lighter color here. So I'll just go right into this. If I want to go a step down, so I actually do have to move a step down and maybe pinker. So a little bit of alizarin permanent. So I'll actually go right into this area of the color value web. And this is just how the colors start to organize themselves in this kind of fashion. So that pinkish color, let's see here. That pinkish color I want to use over here. And now that's, see, a mistake. So I'm going to clean that off with the mineral spirits. And what was I talking about? The acrylic, yeah. I would get the Liquitex acrylic, the professional. That's my favorite type with the acrylic. Although I really like the Golden brand also. And with oil paints, I would just colored pencils. No, actually, I haven't tried colored pencils. Okay, how to put this? The water mixable oil paints with whatchamacallit, I forgot the name already. Oh, the Winsor & Newton's Artisan water mixable oil paints. The ones that I was using back when I was doing water mixables, since we're talking about when do I usually go live. So the live stream for the Patreon is the first Sunday of every month, the first live. So Sunday is live chat, Saturday is live stream painting demo. So yesterday I did a live demo for the live stream tier members on Patreon. That video will be uploaded next Saturday. So yeah, usually the first Saturday, the first Sunday of every month around 12 o'clock p.m. Or should I say exactly at 12? Because with live stream, I have to be exacting. Cad Yellow. I want to give drawing and painting lessons online. I prefer linen, and I will go right back to what I was saying about the water mixables in a second here. So, okay, I forgot the sequence of questions. My memory. Let's go back to the water mixables, and if I forgot one of the questions, just feel free to ask it again. The Artisan Winsor Newton, they're really, really good paints. But I find that I can't have a nice variety of flesh tones with the water mixable of the Artisan. So I find that no matter how hard I try to mix the color with the Winsor Artisan, I don't really get the rich color quality that I get from artist grade traditional oil paints. And it's the same thing really with the cheaper oil paints. The other question was about live or online classes. Yes, I want to offer online classes. Cobra, yes, that's the one that everyone is telling me about. See, that's why I'm not that quick to denounce water mixable. I have to try Cobra. I just haven't really gotten around to ordering it. I had another question. I think Deborah, you asked me another question. Did I answer your question, Deborah, or did I forget? Yeah, with the live chat, it just kind of stays on my screen for a few seconds, so I have to read very quickly. Ah, cad yellow in the flesh tone. All right, so let's go down to the cadmium yellow. So the cadmium yellow, I didn't use as much. So you're seeing it over here. I just used one little kind of swoop from it in the lightest lights. So over here, I actually will not use the cadmium yellow here in the middle tones. Pastel, yeah, I've used pastel before, but a long time ago, probably like 10 years ago. How many hours a day? Well, it really depends. I've been kind of going through a rut recently, kind of like artist block. Um, so on a good day, I'll spend about, I'd say, 8 hours painting, and then 2 hours like doing painting related stuff or like YouTube related stuff. So about 10 hours I try to work. Um, and that's barely enough to make a living. Uh-huh. Oh, about not trusting the photograph. So, okay, I'll get to that, answer the other question first. So, on a good day, I'll try and work 10 hours. Not on the same painting, however, I'll actually rotate between paintings. So, on one painting, I'll work about 3 hours or something like that. Then I'll take a break, work on another painting, take a break, work on another painting. Okay, yeah, I try to leave some of the brush strokes. So now going back to the photo reference, not trusting the photo reference, I'll get right to that. This is what I don't trust about photo references, though we're used to looking at them all the time. Oh, this is Madeline, by the way. So it tends to flatten out the form here. So for me, this is just too flat, too not as what we would see from nature. So working from nature, the model would move and you'd see a little bit of change around the light. And photographs also will make edges too sharp, even though this is actually a really good picture. So my camera is let's see if I can get it, a T7i. So this would be kind of interesting for those of you. Let's move it back here. So my camera that I use for photo references is actually a pretty good photography camera. All right, are you ready for this? This is the camera that you have been kind of looking through. So this is a Canon T7i. So let's look over here. I highly recommend this camera for video. There you can see T7i. Online selling galleries. Actually, I really don't know about the online galleries so much. I've been in some local art shows, but actually I don't have too much experience with the online. Though that would be something interesting to see. So yeah, with the photo reference, I don't really trust the flatness that it has in these areas. Though my image is still kind of flat, as I am trying to build up the forms. And also the color, I don't really trust in the photo reference as much. So just building up planes. I thought it would be neat to kind of show you the camera, the main camera that I use for the YouTube videos, since it's kind of hard to show a camera when you're always looking through that camera. Oh, thank you. And when I'm working in the middle tones like this, I actually like a poofy brush, kind of puffy looking type brush, rather than like this would be too rigid of a mark. From you want to learn from where? Hello. So where would this? Okay, so to start off with, I would highly suggest, if you want to get into portrait painting or painting in general, highly suggest going to open live sessions. What about cheap brushes? Okay, I'm very controversial when it comes to cheap brushes because I'm using cheap brushes. These are pretty cheap. And only oil as a medium. I would suggest using a really good quality medium. Okay, so what I would not cheap out on is the oil paints themselves and the surfaces that you're painting on. But I'm a little controversial when it comes to brushes. These are actually pretty cheap brushes. You can get away with cheap brushes with synthetics. So speaking of cheap brushes, these are Plaza brand brushes. So you can see how used up this one is. This one I got from Fairfax, Virginia, the Plaza. With synthetics, you can cheap out with the brushes. However, with bristles, this is what I would get. Robert Simmons. Let's see if I can. I don't think the camera's focusing. So with bristle, you don't want to cheap out on bristle. A poor quality bristle brush. Let me see if I can show you. No, actually, I haven't tried gouache yet. Okay, so this is what happens with a cheap. This is a Masters Touch brand. This is what happens with a cheap bristle brush. Landscapes. Oh, I would love to do landscapes. If YouTube will allow me, if my viewers would be interested in it, I'd love to do landscapes. This is what happens with a cheap bristle brush. It gets really rough and tough. It's great for scraping, like subtracting. But for applying paint, I would prefer a Robert Simmons Figuary. Figuary. I haven't heard of that one. I heard of Inktober, but not Figuary. That would be neat to try. Though with Figure I can't really post on YouTube just because I hate the fact that YouTube shut down Croquis Cafe. So I don't know if any of you have heard of Croquis Cafe. They're on Vimeo now, so I would check out Croquis Cafe. So spell Crocus and then Cafe. Yeah, YouTube shut them down, so you can't really post figurative stuff on YouTube. Oh, thank you. I wish so. Oil primed canvas and gessoed. So acrylic gesso versus oil primed. Oh yeah, I did have a question about linen and cotton canvas. Yeah, they did Paris. Yeah, YouTube shut them down, but they're on Vimeo now. So I prefer linen. This is not linen. This is cotton canvas. There is a difference if you're painting over an acrylic base. In yesterday's live stream that will be uploaded to YouTube next week, I was actually talking about the differences. When you do an underpainting like this, So this was an acrylic. Actually, you know what? You guys want to know a secret? So this painting, I painted over another painting of her. Um, I don't know if you remember a big head. I painted a big head one time. I titled that video like "Pushing Your Limits" or something. Back when I was doing daily, yeah, I painted over that uh, with the underpainting. First, I drew it out in pastel, charcoal, and then pastel for the outlines. Then I painted over it. So when you have multiple layers of oil paint on a surface, it's really, really nice. It's really pleasant to work with. So let's see how close I can get the camera. So you can see like all the kind of texture that has built up with the layers of oil paint. Though I guess it's pretty smooth, but I do prefer working over oil paint. Aging techniques, golden. No, I haven't used any aging techniques, and I admit I don't even know what that means. Aging technique to make it look like an old master painting, maybe? No. Thank you. Hello. Inspired by Sargent. Yeah, kind of inspired by Sargent, but I take a lot of influence from many different artists, sorry. So like John Singer Sargent, Nelson Shanks. There was another question just came in, but I couldn't read fast enough. So John Singer Sargent, Nelson Shanks, John William Waterhouse, William Bouguereau. Those are like my favorites. In particular, Nelson Shanks. I was lucky enough to meet him once. I studied at a studio in Caminati in Philadelphia for 2 semesters back in 2011, and then my main teacher is an artist named Paulden Hamilton. He teaches in Timonium, Maryland. Is it hard to find buyers for my paintings? Yeah. Yes, it's very difficult. I have paintings for sale on Etsy, but rarely do they sell. I'm fortunate enough to sell at least like one painting every couple months. I mean, it's not really bread and butter kind of money. Yes, I'm making a book. So, acrylic? I like acrylic for like a fast underpainting. Sports? No, I used to rollerblade in the past. Commissions? Yes, I have done some commissions in the past. I did have a feature for commissions in the past, but nobody wanted me to do their commissions. Yes, it is possible to get really good at painting without formal studies. Thank you. Yeah. So take me for an example. I don't consider myself to be that good, but I don't have a typical formal training. So I didn't finish an atelier program. Thank you. I'm glad it's transferable to acrylics, just working in layers. So I don't really have, I didn't finish at an atelier. Simple still life setups. Yeah, I mean, I try to have at least one still life going on. So critiquing painting. So that's what I was mentioning earlier in the stream. I wonder what happened here. For the live stream, and if you go to the patreon.com, I have a mentor tier. So I'm still writing the responses for a couple mentor tiers. making up the... What do you mean I'm making up the girl? No, I'm using a photo reference over here. So that's the photo reference. But in either case, I would check out the patreon.com. And for those of you that are the patrons there, I'll talk to you guys after this stream. What was I talking about? So I didn't do the Atelier route, though I wish I could have. How much do I... so I use a normalized curve for the prices of my paintings. So I'll actually factor in the time and the dimensions of the paintings. Oh, thank you. Opinion on Gamblin's solvent-free fluid. It's a pretty good medium to use if you're not that in a rush. It claims to be a fast dryer, but I find it to be a relatively slow dryer compared to a Liquin or what medium I'm using now, which is all the way down here. So this is Venetian medium. So drawing for absolute beginners. I can do that. I'll take that into account. Okay, so this is my favorite medium currently. Let's see if I can show you the tube. Let's see here. Hello. Yeah, this is my favorite medium so far. It's a little bit on the pricey side. It's a Venetian medium ground leaded crystal. So this is like the Ferrari for me. I couldn't quite get that. So in the next step in portrait painting, I couldn't quite understand that question. First step. Oh, okay, so first step. So I think you're asking the first step. What was the first step in this? The first step, let's see if I can, I already lost it. So the first thing I did was just a bunch of compositional sketches of the model. A bunch of thumbnail sketches in pencil. And then you can still see a little bit of it under here. So I drew the block in, the linear framework of this in charcoal. Then when I went over the lines with the pastel so I can see it. Making a living totally from art, that's a very difficult question to answer. Making a living doing a lot of stuff. I mean, not just art. Teaching, the YouTube channel, of course, and yeah, I hope to be making more. Thank you. A monitor for reference. Yeah, so for reference, I like to use the TV. So I have it set on the TV. The laptop is set up to the TV. I'm kind of lazy when it comes to printing out the pictures. And someone told me once upon a time that photo references distort reality, and then when you print it out, it distorts the distortion. So it also kind of helps to not distort by printing. You know, printer could flatten out the image even more, I think. Okay, so I'm a little over time now. So the live chats for the Patreon members, so patrons, we're going to talk after this. So the live stream is 30 minutes, so 12 to 12:30. So now we are at the 12:39 mark. So thank you so much for attending the live stream, the live chat. Please go into patreon.com. That would really help me out if you check out my Patreon account where you'll have access to all of this. Thank you so much for watching, and be on the lookout for this on Instagram. I'll post it later on to Instagram. So thank you so much, and see you next time.